Hello and welcome to our next podcast in a series of highlighting all the winners from our awards from last year. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Jim Carter, who's Commercial Director at the Ministry of Defence. And this particular category was Best Supplier Relationship Management Initiative, and it was won by the Ministry of Defence and Cabinet Office on a joint entry. Welcome, Jim. Thanks for coming along today to share your story. So I shall hand over to you, Jim, without further ado, and then I'll pop back at the end and ask you some questions.
Great, Emma. Thanks. Really great to join you today. So yeah, I'll talk a bit about the background to the programme, why it was required, our case for change, the suppliers that were involved, the process we followed, and our successes, but also probably as importantly, some of the challenges and lessons learned. I'll try not to use acronyms. The Ministry of Defence, or MOD, is terrible for acronyms. Okay, so this is a quote from one of our key stakeholders, our CFO, or the equivalent of our CFO, our Director General Finance. I'll let you read the quote, but I'll pick out a couple of things from it. I think delivering improved performance is really key. So you get improved relationships with suppliers through improved performance more often than the other way around. It's coordinating the right kind of strategic conversations between us and the supplier, kind of cross-government, and then this concept of delivering mutual benefit is also key. So this slide talks about the rationale and the case for change. Hopefully you can see most of it. I know that the pictures are over the top of part of it. And I'll step round these 5 boxes very quickly, but fundamentally at its heart, I think there was recognition in the Ministry of Defence that we could manage these big strategic relationships more effectively and get more from them, more in terms of performance, in terms of sort of cost, delivery, innovation and partnership. And I think, the acquisition processes we know can be a bit unwieldy and slow. And we're working hard actually to make them more agile, more proportionate to need. I think the second box in the bottom right-hand corner highlights the challenges you have. I'm sure that's common to a lot of people listening to the podcast when things have gone awry. I mean, how do you avoid getting stuck contractually where you get that erosion of trust and that kind of what can seem an inevitable decline into kind of litigation and more adversarial behaviours? How do you break out of that cycle? The third and fourth boxes here are quite similar, actually. They're about recognising the importance of how we interact with suppliers in a consistent way and how we can cohere information kind of internal to government in a way that can be more effectively leveraged. And then finally, the fifth box, this is about how do we draw in best practice and the kind of leading edge thinking whilst continuing to operate, obviously, in the legislative framework that we do. So out of those kind of that case for change, the program was born. This is a slide that sort of reflects the scale and scope of the suppliers in the program. There are 19 in scope. That's quite a big number for a strategic program like this. We did use quite a sophisticated sort of segmentation approach to identify them. That reflected their kind of scale, spend, complexity, but also the opportunity within them and their criticality to defence. And the words on the right-hand side here, which you can't really see, they talk to some of the roles that we implemented. So there's 2 really key ones. There's a relationship lead, and that's a kind of executive customer voice within the Ministry of Defence that leads in that relationship, and also a role called the strategic partnering manager. And I hired sort of full-time strategic partnering managers to help implement the programme, and we appointed relationship leads in consultation with our permanent secretary and the MOD executive board. And I'll talk a bit more about those roles over the coming slides. So this slide describes the process of the programme at a high level, and 3 of the core kind of products or outputs of the programme. They are a one government day, the partner executive meeting, and then work streaming. So this first phase is really about doing your homework. It includes a really deep diagnostic and understanding the scope and that portfolio of that supplier, and evidence, really evidential data on their performance, and an understanding of the stakeholders on both sides. So within the mod and government, and on the supplier side. And that ultimately results in a meeting called the One Government Day. And that brings together the internal stakeholders and holds a bit of a mirror up to our experience. And how do we collectively see that supplier as a customer today? And what do we want from them? So it's top down and sort of bottom up. So we're really sort of drawing out all the information we can from across the customer base. And the role of the strategic partnering manager is then to sort of listen, become an expert, and really cohere all of that information into a SWOT, or a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And it's also actually about understanding, how do we as a customer contribute to that supplier performance? There's a bit of an adage, you get the supplier you deserve, but we are conscious about how we might be contributing to their performance. The outputs of that session are then taken forward into this partner executive meeting. That's a meeting with the chief executive, the group CEO of the supplier, and their top team. And we have a conversation around what we found and how we want to drive change. It needs to be really grounded in facts and evidence. That makes you more credible and authoritative in that meeting. And it should result in opportunities and priorities for work streaming, which I'll talk about in a sec. So the aim is to get to this joint plan. It's underpinned by the partnering principles and behaviours, and then those meetings, the One Government Day and the partner executive meeting, are repeated on a cycle, and they become the kind of flags around which the programme runs. So the work streaming is really important, because that's about how you actually drive change. So this is a formal methodology for addressing a risk, an issue, or delivering an opportunity. And the key thing is, it's about joint working. It steps away from a kind of them and us, and it takes a really evidence-based approach. And it looks at the root causes of problems in a kind of non-judgmental way, and then steps around systematically addressing those issues. And I'll bring that to life a bit in these next couple of slides. So the application and joint working with suppliers around that work streaming has already transformed a number of areas for the MOD. So I'll let you read these quotes just quickly. And I really like the first quote, actually, because it gets away from this misconception that partnering or collaborating with suppliers is in some way soft or kind of fluffy. This is anything but. I mean, genuinely managing suppliers to the highest standards, driving performance, isn't easy, but it's rewarding, and it leads to this mutual benefit that I mentioned. And the quotes from Babcock at the bottom of the slide were actually written after a work stream that fixed a quite challenging issue with a piece of infrastructure, and it delivered a 90% reduction in operational risk. So it was really tangible, significant value, and it became a bit of a catalyst for more buy-in for the programme and its approach. And you can see that in the quote there at the bottom of the slide. So this slide on the challenges and learnings. So the size and scale of the relationships and contracts in the MOD is pretty vast. So just the scope of the programme is about 13 billion just for the MOD, actually, of spend, annual spend, and it's a really multifaceted and complex contract landscape, as you can imagine. The second point about strategic patience is also key. So it takes time to do this really well. It takes time to build relationships and build trust, and delivering kind of genuine cultural change, anchoring that change takes time. And we use that phrase about strategic patience quite often. it's also, we've all been operating, haven't we, in quite an uncertain time as well, with the exit from the EU and COVID. But we see the programme as a vehicle to help drive change and to respond in an agile way to some of those changes and uncertainties. And then cohering across the MOD, we have multiple customers, multiple departments often that use these that interact with these suppliers. So the stakeholder management challenge across that broad landscape is a challenge. On the learnings, I think I would certainly reflect that resourcing a program, any kind of SRM or partnering program, is key. I mean, the people are key. This is quite a small team actually, but they're leaders. So more kind of a smaller but more senior, impactful team, I think, is important. Doing your homework. So don't be impatient when you're implementing these programs to jump to the improvement actions before doing the detailed work and really delving into that existing contract performance and understanding the opportunities so that you can apply your resource and effort in the most effective way. I was struck actually on the next point about internal alignment, about how getting these disparate kind of business areas in a room, and often that's both central government and arm's length bodies and wider government bodies as well, but in a room to share knowledge, to share experience, gives tremendous insights, and it makes sure that we're speaking consistently with one voice and have a shared view of the supplier. That's quite powerful. I'll probably pick one more out there of the list, and that's about this lead executive in the partner organisation. So getting a senior kind of operational executive to lead on their side is really key. For example, in Babcock, we worked with a new role that had been appointed, a managing director of strategic partnering, reporting into the chief executive. That was appointed and that we worked with, and that provided a great lever to be able to help implement the program across that organisation, aligned with us. So I think the shared measures that you can monitor and track is also key. But yeah, hopefully those are clear. So just finally, I wanted to mention that this is under my picture there, it says the strategic partnering program operation model, and we're putting in place sort of the wiring and the operating model to sustain success, enduring success for the program. We recognise we're on a journey, and we're working really closely with our colleagues, obviously in the Cabinet Office, but also in other departments to implement this in a consistent way. And I think that point around strategic patience, it's also the case that the benefits you get from programs like this start to sort of grow over time in terms of their impact. So you get a kind of hockey sticking. There's low-hanging fruit and early wins, but actually the deeper you can engage with the supplier over a longer period of time, you can really unlock the bigger kind of transformational benefits that are of most value. So this final slide is a quote I said when we won the award, which I really stand by. So it's really kind of great to see the winners logo, the CIPS winners logo, on the auto signatures of the team now. It's made the kind of organisation sit up, I think, and recognise what we've been doing. I think public sector procurement and procurement in the Ministry of Defence can sometimes come in for criticism, obviously. So it's great to counter that narrative with some good news and a positive story. So anyway, we're delighted with the win, and hopefully that's been interesting to hear the journey. Thanks.
Brilliant, thanks, Jim. So an amazing piece of work, really complex and large piece of work, and that cross-functional working that between the MOD and the Cabinet Office. How did you pull that together? Did you have a cross-functional team to pull the submission together itself? It must have been quite difficult to get quite a big project and condense it down into one submission.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the way the project was sort of set up, the Cabinet Office had been working with their own kind of cross-government strategic partnering program for some time. So we were taking some of that methodology, which had been being deployed, and applying it really to the Ministry of Defence. So that really helped, because there, we had an example of people who were a bit further ahead on the journey. And yes, in terms of the submission itself, we got members of my team and also the Cabinet Office team together to review and make sure that it kind of reflected where we got to. So yeah, I mean, and actually that's a reflection really of the big challenge of the project. It's taking this really disparate information, bringing it together into a sort of concise and easy to understand picture.
And that's not an easy job really as well. So I guess, would you agree our advice is always to start early on these things and make sure you give yourself plenty of time?
Oh, in terms of the submission, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's really true. I think it's terrible, isn't it, when you write? I mean, I've entered quite a few times in the past, and when you're sort of rushing, it's terrible. I also think what we were very conscious of is one thing us saying it, but actually getting the testimonials from others, from other key stakeholders and the suppliers is really powerful. So, and the earlier you can engage in that process and engaging with colleagues who have been impacted, the better, because they need time to contribute. So yeah, I think early, getting your sort of thought process developed. I also think whether you win or not, the process of going through an application is quite helpful, because it gets you to think about the project in a different way, to reflect on what you've done and what you might do sort of differently next time. So I think it's there's a learning exercise actually just in filling out an application, I think.
Absolutely. It's nice just to reflect on all the great work you've done as well. I mean, that lovely quote from you at the end there about how it feels. What about the rest of the team? How did you celebrate? Did it increase morale? How did it feel afterwards?
I like to think so. I mean, it was obviously for all of us during kind of COVID, wasn't it, September? So it's a shame we didn't get to do the big black tie event, but we were all delighted. I mean, it's been a difficult few months, so it was a bit of a silver lining on quite a dark cloud. So I think it's been good. And actually, I think as I said in the quote, we know we've got more to do. This isn't something. It's a bit of a Forth Road Bridge paint job. This one, you've got to keep at it, keep working. So although we've got a good start and we're delighted to win the award, there's lots more to go after. So it's galvanized the team, but made them feel like they're on the right path and can continue to deliver, I think.
Absolutely. And you're obviously motivated to enter the awards, like you say, that you've entered in previous years too. What advice would you give to others who were thinking about it? What's that motivation that you get to enter every year?
Well, I think it's really powerful actually to get that external validation, and I think it can make your organisation sort of sit up and think, wow, okay, it's not just the procurement or commercial team saying that they're doing good work; they've actually been recognised by their peers and by the judges. So I think that's pretty important. I think I would advise, having actually judged in the past, I'd also really advise people entering to look carefully at the way that the awards are structured, and to answer the questions set out and in the way that the sort of exam questions asked. I remember sometimes people really good submissions kind of just miss the mark by answering the question in the way set out. So that would be my sort of more practical advice on entering, I think.
Great. Okay. Well, fabulous submission, and many congratulations once again on your win. And I look forward to reading this year's submissions, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm sure we will enter. So yeah, thanks, Emma. Really, really delighted to be part of this.
Thanks, Jim. Please go to the website to find out more about how to enter for this year. There's a toolkit to download, how to enter guide. Make sure you read all the different categories and what the judges are looking for. And like Jim says, read that guide to make sure that you're answering the exam questions to get the best out of your submission. So I look forward to reading all of your submissions this year. Good luck.